Next on Great Performances.
Showbiz!
Look for the first ever.
Hello everyone, and thanks once again for joining us for this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. On the satellite photos, we've got the next system rolling right into the southwest interior here with snow spreading northward to St. Lawrence Island along with some increasing winds, and that also extending over to the Seward Peninsula across Norton Sound and advancing eastward here. Higher clouds thickening up throughout the afternoon there across Kodiak on up into Cook Inlet. And then a lot of cloudiness up here over the central and northeast interior there. On out to the Yukon, and still the blizzard warnings continuing. Both sides of the Arctic coast there, the eastern Arctic coast, seeing winds gusting over 60 miles an hour today over at Dead Horse and Barter Island. Pretty windy conditions there, heavy blowing snow, but that warning is due to end at 6 p.m. this evening. And the other one, they had a winter storm warning or blizzard warning on the western side as well. That has ended and is now just a winter weather advisory. They'll be out for tonight. Got winter weather advisories out tonight for the Seward Peninsula, St. Lawrence Island, the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta for snow, locally blowing and drifting. Also a winter weather advisory out for the Susitna Valley, the Madnuska Valley for 4 to 8 inches of snow with possibly as much as 16 inches falling around Hatcher Pass here. And that kicks in at midnight tonight until 4 p.m. Monday afternoon. So some pretty good snowfall will be occurring over the Madnuska Valley for a change, and no advisory out for the Susitna Valley. And here over the southeast coast today, you can see the clearing that took place from Dixon Entrance on up to the north, with the showers mostly dropping off to the southeast. Still some lingering moisture around, but nothing too significant. Clearing here along the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound area, and also behind the front out over the eastern Aleutians. You can see the cloud shield associated with the next system right there creeping up on the Shimia area, and that associated with a warm front that's farther down to the southwest there. Otherwise, we have a pretty good 983 millibar low here over the south central Bering Sea area, almost in the central Bering Sea, and strong westerly winds coming around that, especially along and north of the Aleutians there on the south side of that low center, driving that front and moisture eastward with rain over the Alaska Peninsula on back to the Fox Islands. Had not mixed with snow yet on Alaska. They're still in the lower 40s at mid-afternoon Sunday. Rain occurring over the Pribilofs, a mixture in this zone, and snow possibly blowing and drifting there on the increase there for the Yukon Delta, and also deteriorating conditions over St. Lawrence Island. Otherwise, high pressure over the interior, light winds, but a lot of clouds underneath that ridge. So it was mostly cloudy up through here, a little bit more in the way of breaks down across the Kenai Peninsula and North Gulf Coast areas, and then pretty good trough, keeping those strong winds throughout much of the day along the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, as I mentioned, gusting over 60 miles an hour, 60 to 70 possibly in some areas up there, and then trailing back lighter winds in the advisory area along the west side of the Arctic coast. Otherwise, again, for the Panhandle, this trough slipping on down to the southeast there, so some rain and snow showers continuing. Prince of Wales Island on over towards Stewart and Hyder, with clearing back to the north. And we'll see for tonight that break holds here over the Panhandle and actually extends down. Still a risk of some light snow showers over the extreme southern areas of Ned Island, Metlakatla, and over toward Hyder and Stewart. But Prince of Wales Island should be dry with increasing clearing here over the southern areas as clouds increase up here to the north as that front drives eastward on that strong west-southwest jet, pushing snow along the North Gulf Coast. The mixed zone probably staying near or off the coast at least through tonight. And then back behind the front, pretty strong winds here entering the southeast Bering Sea and into Bristol Bay, coming across Kodiak Island. Front pushes through and drying out with some clearing there. Widespread area of snow even behind the front here, extending all the way back out not only to the southwest coast, but back into the east central Bering Sea to the Pribilofs. A little bit more showery type conditions back in through this area, but looks like widespread area of snow coming into the central and southern part of the state. A few flurries up to the northeast there, and conditions definitely improving considerably here up over the Arctic coast. Again, already noticing that on the west side, and then the east side there we'll see a significant improvement, especially after midnight tonight. Out in the Aleutians, next system not nearly as strong. 1,006 millibar low there near Shumianat-2. A occluded front brings mixed precipitation and breezy conditions, possibly as far east as Adak by morning. Tomorrow's forecast, next system, snow, blowing snow, winter weather advisories here over the northwest part of the state, especially the western Arctic coast there with snow and blowing snow, reducing visibility to a quarter mile or less, or a half mile or less at times. Winds roughly gusting 25 to 40, possibly 45 miles an hour. Less wind, but and also less snow. Won't be as heavy, and beginning to get a little more showery as you head southward here, but that'll be in along the southwest coast. Lingering snow showers, Alaska Peninsula, and diminishing snow here, that batch of moisture pushing eastward. So snow in the morning, again, especially the Matanuska Valley, and that'll become less showery in the afternoon. Rain and snow, southern panhandle, snow in the north there with winter weather advisories out in those areas as well. And the outlook for Thursday, a little bit better, just snow showers now for the southeast coast with the main frontal type moisture well into Canada and dissipating. A couple of trough here off the coast. That'll keep snow showers pretty numerous, especially over the central and southern southeast coast of Dixon Entrance, colder air aloft, and more scattered in nature up to the north. Drying out with offshore flow once again behind the system. High pressure building out over the Bering Sea here. We've got a disturbance tracking southeastward. It'll bring a widespread area of light snow from the Koyukuk Valley on down into the northern Kuskokwim Valley and then along the western slopes of the Alaska Range here. And then another trough, but not as windy there for the eastern Arctic coast, but general areas of IFR with light snow and fog. Better conditions, though, back to the west. Not too bad up over the northwest interior areas in the Seward Peninsula and those zones. And you can see really nice high pressure builds right in across the eastern Aleutian Center, just south of the Fox Islands there. And that ridge extends right on up into the Russian Far East there. And to the west of that ridge, next storm, and it's pretty fierce, central pressure down to 949 millibars. And possible hurricane, definitely storm force winds associated with that, and possible hurricane force winds coming into the western Aleutians and the southwest Bering Sea later in the day on Thursday, and especially on Thursday night. Looking at the low temperatures forecast for Monday morning, anywhere from 15 to 30 below zero up over the northeast interior, coldest over the Yukon Flats, Chuckyitzik, Fort Yukon, and those areas, and 10 to 15 below eastern Beaufort Sea coast to 0 to 5 below on the west side. Temperatures falling below zero over the northwest as well, and then milder lower 30s to near 40 for the Alaska Peninsula, while the southeast coast ranges from teens there up the Klondike Highway to lower 20s to upper 20s down to the south, and near 30 out along the coast. And any lows tonight anywhere from 5 to 15 for south central Alaska, mostly in the lower 30s there for Kodiak Island. And then your highs for Monday afternoon shaping up like this, staying fairly well below zero up there over the northeast interior in some areas. That's Arctic Village, high minus 13, otherwise minus 2 at Fort Yukon, and a little above zero there, central eastern Arctic coast to lower to mid-teens here, Kotzebue Sound, Noatak Valley areas in the Seward Peninsula, lower 20s, St. Lawrence Island, and 20s here over the southwest part of the state, Bristol Bay into the mid-30s, highs lower 40s there from Cold Bay Falls Pass over toward Unalaska, even Nikolsky, and Adak and Atka edging up above the 40-degree mark out there with Shimia, though, in the upper 30s. And the southeast coast may reach 40 there, Port Alexander and Sitka, otherwise mid to upper 30s. And the lows for Tuesday morning, back down toward 30 below up over the northeast interior again, and below zero all the way down the Copper River Basin in that 0 to 10 below range for that area. Single numbers showing up now over the Susitna Valley, so falling near zero there, and especially around the Willow area. Could fall a little below zero possibly if you get the clearing, and teens otherwise for south central Alaska, mid-20s Kodiak Island, and definitely cooler here into Bristol Bay. You can see lower to mid-teens there, King Salmon over toward Dillingham. But the Alaska Peninsula staying fairly mild and even above freezing there to the west. Upper 30s again for the eastern Aleutians, and lower to mid-30s for the Panhandle to maybe the upper 20s there around Yakutat to maybe Haines. And for the afternoon highs on Tuesday, edging up closer to zero, but still remaining a little below there in Anatuvik and Arctic Village, but into near 10 to 15-ish there for the northeast interior. Same thing for the Copper River Basin, mid-teens Tanana Valley, mid-20s out toward the southwest coast.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather, big area of IFR here with all the moisture sliding from west to east here, covering just about all of southern Alaska here, especially out to the southwest. Bristol Bay, on down the north side of the Alaska Peninsula, on up to the Bering Strait, through the Bering Strait, and into the western north slope to the central Arctic coast. IFR spreading eastward along the North Gulf Coast, reaching Yakutat late tonight. Marginal VFR covering the Panhandle will be increasing and moving across the Panhandle. A break of VFR up to the north for tomorrow afternoon, Monday afternoon. An expanding area of IFR here with that next big storm there off the western Arctic coast, and that'll be over to the central Arctic coast, probably over to, looks like just about the Dead Horse, Prudhoe Bay area in the afternoon, all the way down across Kotzebue Sound, Selawik Valley, and the north side of the Seward Peninsula, marginal VFR south of there up to the coast, and improving here over southern Alaska throughout the afternoon, especially lingering IFR over the Panhandle, and a VFR breaking out there, Kodiak Island on up into Cook Inlet. Outlook for Tuesday morning, massive IFR area up here from the Arctic, right across the Arctic coast, right down into the central Kuskokwim Valley to the Alaska Range, and then back on out to the northwest across the Kobuk, Koyukuk, and Selawik valleys there, as well as Kotzebue Sound, marginal VFR, northeast Bering Sea, and here over the southeast Bering and Bristol Bay with an area of IFR lingering just west of Kodiak Island on up into southern Bristol Bay, but big VFR area covering the central western Aleutians, southwest Bering. And then for the afternoon forecast, this area kind of expands and increases there over the toward the border of the Panhandle with marginal VFR elsewhere. Less IFR now, but still hung up along the north side and the west side of the Alaska Range to Denali Park, up there into the greater Fairbanks area and down into Nikolai and McGrath. IFR, Brooks Range, eastern north slope, and the next storm spreading IFR into the western part of the state, or the western Aleutian, southwest Bering. VFR becoming marginal tomorrow for both Adigan and Anatuvik passes. Lake Clark, Merrill, IFR at times, especially on the western approaches. Rainy, lowest conditions on the western approach, otherwise, or will be IFR with the lowest conditions on the western entrance. Windy, marginal VFR. Isabel, same forecast. Mentasta, starting out VFR, trending toward marginal throughout the afternoon. Tanita, IFR to start with, and that'll begin to improve during the afternoon to at least marginal VFR. And for Portage, looks pretty good, possibly becoming VFR in the afternoon, but starting out with marginal conditions. And for Chilcoot and White, VFR. For the surface map here, or I'm sorry, the freezing level map at the surface along the southeast coast, North Gulf Coast, and cutting across northern Bristol Bay to Nunivak Island on out to the west there, and 2,000 feet just south of the central Aleutians and southern Gulf of Alaska. Icing, an area of light to isolated moderate rime icing here for the southeast coast, and this will all be progressing eastward, so improving back to the west there. Still some moisture hung up along the Alaska Range down into northeast Bristol Bay, and then icing there with that storm off the western Arctic coast, scattered areas over the southern Bering and the Aleutians. Jet stream, winds aloft, westerlies 130 knots here from east to west, pushing those systems one after another eastward here into mainly southern Alaska and down into the Gulf there with 140 knots crossing the Alaska Peninsula. Arctic jet, polar vortex, keeping the Arctic coast under its influence. And for 9,000 feet, pretty strong winds here right across Kodiak tomorrow, 45 to as high as 70 knots there right across Sitkinak, across the Gulf of Alaska into the Panhandle, 55 to 65 knots there for the southeast coast. Lighter up here over the northeast interior, but still kicking up to 35 knots eastern Arctic coast and 3,000-foot winds. 45, a little more northwesterly here, 45 to 55, turning west, 65 across Kodiak. Strong winds across the Gulf, a little lighter, 30 to 40 knotters on into the Panhandle. And out over the Aleutians, we've got winds falling back to 20 knots way out there west, but AKwx still west 50 knots. And 35, get as high as 60 knots here crossing the Alaska Peninsula. So widespread, moderate, possibly even severe turbulence for small aircraft here southwest interior in the Aleutians, up along the northwest coast, and over the Panhandle.
Welcome to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and joining us once again is our good friend Eric Stevens from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska. Thanks again for joining us, Eric. We really appreciate it, as always.
Happy to be here, Dave.
Thanks. And, you know, we're going to ask you some more satellite questions here, but, you know,
Okay.
Since you're a regular guest, we're going to give you a riddle this time, kind of a trick start to the show.
Okay.
How do you see a polar bear in a snowstorm?
Sounds like a challenging question because
Okay.
the polar bear is white and the snowstorm's white.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Well, in the world of satellite meteorology, you couldn't, because the spatial resolution of this instrument that we're going to talk about today has 375 meters resolution, and even the most well-fed polar bear will not be 375 meters across.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to run into such a
No, it'd be a
creature,
bad day.
would you? In the satellite meteorology world, the equivalent would be, how do you tell the difference between clouds and then an area that has no clouds but's covered by snow,
Right.
a piece of ocean that has no clouds but has sea ice? All three of these are white.
Right.
The snow, the clouds, the sea ice, it's all white. So how, using satellite data, can you tell someone where the clouds are and where the clear areas are? This is important for aviators. Mariners want to know, in the ocean there, this white stuff, is that sea ice or is that just a cloud?
Right.
How do we tell the difference? And it turns out, if you look, say, at a picture of Alaska from the springtime, March or April, and it's high noon, so we're getting a lot of sunshine. If you were riding on a satellite with your human eye, look down, everything's white.
Right.
And we've got a picture of Alaska from early April, and we're seeing some of the lower elevations in south central Alaska are melting out, getting some brown ground there, but otherwise there's a whole lot of white on the image. What areas are cloudy, but what areas are clear and covered by snow or ice?
Okay.
It turns out that if we leave the visible spectrum behind a little bit. See, a satellite has multiple channels in the electromagnetic spectrum that it can look at. Part of that's visible light, what we see as humans, but there's a lot going on at other wavelengths. If we add in something that's called near infrared, what we couldn't quite see, but we're getting into that infrared territory, there's a magical property that we can exploit.
Secrets to find. Okay.
Oh yeah. This is actually powerful and almost magical, that at a slightly longer wavelength, when the sun shines down on Alaska and then it bounces off back to the satellite, at that near infrared wavelength, it turns out that snow and ice will absorb that wavelength, but liquid water, like liquid droplets in a cloud, will reflect it back. And that's not the way it works in visible. You know, visible, it just bounces off of all those targets the same. But at near infrared, snow and ice absorbs it, and the liquid will reflect it back. Liquid cloud droplets will do that. And so an image where everything looks white suddenly becomes colorful. And the way this recipe works is that the clouds look pink, and the snow-covered ground and the ice-covered ocean look blue. Suddenly now, we're able to see the polar bear in the snowstorm. We're able to see where the clouds are and where the snow is and where the ice is. This is a powerful advantage. Consider the case zooming into the Bering Strait area. What if you were asked to brief a pilot who wanted to fly, say, from Kotzebue down to Savunga or Gamble and had to fly VFR, visual flight rules, so they had to stay out of the clouds? Could you use a satellite image where everything is white to provide that pilot any guidance?
It'd be pretty tricky.
Very tricky. And that's why we have to go to this other recipe where the all-white polar bear in the snowstorm becomes more colorful. And now we can tell the pilot, aha, this is a cloud you want to stay out of, but over here, sure, it looks white in the visible spectrum, But what we're doing, we'll show you, oh, this is just snow-covered ground, but it's clear, so you can fly right through there. Visual flight rules. Same thing for a mariner who might want to get down to St. Lawrence Island, say, but has to avoid the sea ice. This product has applicability there as well.
Wonderful.
It's an amazing new technology, so many new channels. The satellite that makes this imagery actually has 22 different channels that it looks at.
22 secret decoder rings.
22 secret decoder rings.
Okay. You know, I liken this to an activity I had in the car when I was growing up. We go on long car rides, and we do all the work in these activity books to, you know, stay calm, cool, and collected for our parents who are trying to get us across the state. But to get the answer, the real answer, you had to apply that red sheet to see the answer or the secret path or whatever the message was in that activity book to get you onto the next page. And it's also like a photography filter, right? If you're taking a lot of pictures, you can apply different colors to see different parts of that image. I mean, that sounds a lot like what you're talking about.
Oh, you know it. The information is in there all along. We just have to combine the channels in a way to reveal what's in there. And by the way, you're dating yourself. So you didn't have an iPad in the back of the car?
No, sir.
Okay. Well, we have, lastly, for dessert, there's a great image of the same kind of recipe. We're looking at South Central Alaska the first week of January. In first week of January, the sun, even at noon, is really low on the horizon, barely up. And in this image, the fun thing is the shadow of Denali. We can see the shadow of Denali over a lower pink cloud deck.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And Denali at 20,000 feet casts a big shadow. So this is another, just for fun, kind of application here. This is called multispectral satellite imagery, and it's the future. And happily, the future is now.
Oh, that is fascinating. And 22 different secrets that can be revealed from just one satellite tool that's floating overhead. Eric, thanks so much for joining us again. We can't wait to have you back and telling us more secrets of satellite technology that are passing over us every single day, many times a day, over Alaska and helping us all the way in many different parts of our lives. So thanks so much for joining us again.
Well, happy to be here.
All right. And thank you for staying with us. We'll be back with a little more weather here in just a few minutes. And of course, we'll have more Alaska weather facts anytime online.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis finished this afternoon shows an increase in the sea ice here from yesterday through the Bering Strait, even the Chukchi Sea there, closing in those open water areas, expanding out to the west once again with the colder air that moved in yesterday and continued today. Not so much of an increase at all down here, not much change for the southwest coast, Kuskokwim Bay into Bristol Bay. And then for the coastal water forecast, we're looking at minimum gales out of the west here for the southern panhandle, and then 45 to as high as 50 knots up here along the north coast, with seas approaching 20 feet. Strong winds for Lynn Canal, south 40, gusts 55 knots, and gales out for Stevens Passage as well with gusts up to 50 knots. Clarence Strait, south 30, seas 6 feet. And for Tuesday, gales continue along the entire coastline out of the west, 35 knots, seas running 22 to 23 feet. And for the inside water, southwest 20 for Clarence Strait, diminishing to south 20 Stevens Passage, and south winds lighter for northern Lynn Canal at 30 knots. Prince William Sound tomorrow, northeast 20, seas 4 feet. Gale force westerlies 40 knots for the North Gulf Coast with seas around 18 feet, 45 knots for the Barren Islands, and from Kachemak Bay into southern Cook Inlet, gales with 40-knot winds, seas as high as 18 feet. Outlook for Tuesday, southwest 10 for northern Cook Inlet, west 25 south of the Forelands, increased to 35 from the west Kachemak Bay, up to 50 knots, storm warnings for the Barrens, 45 knots western North Gulf Coast, and then toward the east they diminished to minimum gales. Prince William Sound, winds picking up again, northwest 30 with seas building to 6 feet. Kodiak Island, west-southwest, 50 knots tomorrow with higher gusts, seas building to 23 feet. 22 feet for Shelikof Strait, Sitkinak all the way down to Cape Sarachev, west 45 with gusts 60 knots here to the northeast, and then storm warnings for both Bristol Bay on down along the Alaska Peninsula where seas will be building as high as 33 feet. And then for Tuesday, we've got northwest 30 here for the Alaska Peninsula and Bristol Bay, west-northwest 30 to 35 for Kodiak Island. Aleutians out west, west-southwest at 35 with 15 to 20 foot seas. Adak southwest at 30, and the strongest winds here on Alaska Island out of the west, 35 to 45 knots with seas as high as 32 feet. And then for Tuesday, those come down to northwest at 25 there and become a little more variable, and then easterly to south-southeast 30 knots. Next storm brings storm force winds with it late in the afternoon to the far western Aleutians up to 50 knots. And for the southwest coast, we've got strong winds south of Nunivak Island tomorrow, blowing into Kuskokwim Bay, gusting as high as 16 knots, sustained 45, seas building to 25 feet. West winds at 35 knots with 31 foot seas for the Pribilofs tomorrow, northwest 30 for St. Matthew Island, and small craft advisories for St. Lawrence Island, 25 knots, 11 foot seas. And then those come down to 20 knots on Tuesday. Northwest 25 to 30 for the southwest coast. Westerlies now, less wind there for the Pribilofs, 25 knots, and also for St. Matthew Island. Up along the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, a lot less wind tomorrow. Winds coming down actually this evening and overnight, and just 15 to 20 tomorrow. Southwest 20 for the central coast, and then brisk wind advisories on the western coast, and then from the Cape Beaufort area down to the Whales west at 30. Those become north-northwest in that zone on Tuesday and drop off a little bit to 25 knots, north 30, 25 to 30 knots central and west side, and dropping off to 20 knots and then swinging around to the southwest at 25 over toward Demarcation Point. And for tonight again, we've got this low pressure area tracking due east right into the southwest coast just north of Nunivak Island. Strong west-southwest jet driving the front and snow eastward across south-central Alaska and toward the Wrangels toward morning, or into the Wrangels toward morning. Winter weather advisory out for the Matanuska Valley for 6 to 12 inches of snow, as high as 16 inches by tomorrow afternoon for Hatcher Pass, with widespread area of snow all the way back out to the southwest coast, dry up to the north, and that system pushes eastward, slows up here over the southern panhandle, mostly mixed rain and snow at sea level there over the southern areas, snow to the north, and snow diminishing with tapering off snow showers here with the last trough moving through south central Alaska. Big storm up there to the northwest brings winter weather advisories back into that area tomorrow afternoon, with winds gusting 50 miles an hour. And then for Tuesday, that system really weakens and moves eastward here, so big improvement back on the western Arctic coast, southward to Norton Sound, and also less snow showers south central Alaska, but still kind of snowy over the Kuskokwim Valley, and the next big storm moves into the western Aleutians. Thank you for joining us.